Some of the 2020 Democratic candidates are spending the beginning of this week campaigning at the nation's first ever Native American presidential forum. The Native American vote could be a factor in a number of swing states. Ali Vitali joining us again from that forum, live now in Sioux City, Iowa. Ali, we know that yesterday Elizabeth Warren opened up with an apology. How are she and the other candidates being viewed by the community right now, and how was that apology taken?
So that apology yesterday really was one of the things that really took the whole forum and was the headline driving out of yesterday, because many people, myself included, were looking to see whether Elizabeth Warren was going to deal with the issue head on or if she was going to try to talk around it. And to her credit, she spoke to it directly. She apologized straight off the bat. And the tribal leaders that I spoke to beforehand weren't necessarily looking to hear an apology. But after she made it, the people that I spoke to here said that they were happy to hear her apologize and that they're hopeful that this is now in the rearview mirror. And so what's interesting about this controversy, if you want to call it that, is if you look at in the beginning when Elizabeth Warren first announced this DNA test dust-up was one of the things that marred the early weeks of her candidacy. And so I think the thinking for yesterday was, is this the way that we can finally close the book on this controversy? I'm not necessarily sure that was accomplished. We'll have to wait and see as we get further down the road. But the person who's been really been putting this in the news cycle consistently is President Donald Trump, when he has that nickname for Elizabeth Warren, which is the racial slur. And so the way I think it manifests as we go over the course of the next few months is the most important thing when I talk to voters, and I feel like you and I talk about this all the time and the other road warriors bring it up too, it's how do we beat Donald Trump? If you're a Democratic voter, that is priority number one 9 out of 10 times. And so for Elizabeth Warren, this could play into the question of electability. Is she someone who can go head to head with Donald Trump? And when I talk to voters about it, although it doesn't always organically come up, this idea of the DNA test, they do say, when you ask, well, do you have any pause still about the DNA test and the Native American heritage issue? Some voters still say, well, she did seem to play into Donald Trump's hands. Maybe she could have handled it better. So it's definitely an unforced error that she made that she's now going to have to prove. Can she go against Donald Trump when he's already clearly defined her in terms of that nickname that he has for her? And I know from covering him for all those years that he's only going to do more of that if she becomes the person who he's going head to head with.
Ali, sticking with that electability issue, Warren had a pretty big crowd at an event last night. Her campaign says she had 12,000 people at a rally. How does all of that play into her electability going forward? Sign of momentum?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Jonathan Martin, I believe it was, at the New York Times asked her recently about how she makes the electability argument. And she basically said that success is the only way that you can prove to people that you can succeed. And so for someone like Elizabeth Warren, who has been to 26 plus states at this point, not all of them being the early primary states, she's trying to make an electability pitch by going to places that went red in 2016, for example. I'm talking about Ohio and West Virginia. And so she's trying to basically make the proof be in the pudding. And so voters are going to have to decide, is the policy and the personality the kind of thing that they think can go up against Donald Trump? But I do think when you start seeing crowds of 12,000 people in a state like Minnesota, which is not just an important state, but also the home state of someone else who's running for president, Amy Klobuchar, I think a lot of people in the field should take note of that. I certainly did last night when I saw that she was drawing such a huge crowd on a weeknight in a state that is going to be important in 2020. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that makes you take notice. And certainly it's her biggest crowd that we've seen so far, and she's going to be making the push that, see, she is energizing people, and this is one of the things that's going to be important going forward.
Ali Vitali in Sioux City, Iowa. Thanks so much.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.